Hello there, I'm a nerd named Ryan, and happy Star Wars Day. Now let's talk about Rogue One, because it's kind of become my favourite Star Wars film. Okay, so Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. This, of course, was the second movie to be released after Star Wars was purchased by Disney. The first one, of course, being Episode 7, The Force Awakens. This was also the first kind of non Skywalker saga film released by Disney. And honestly, this is one of those movies that just kind of gets better every single time I see it. So let's talk about why I like it so much. So Rogue One follows a small team of rebels who are tasked with stealing the plans for the Death Star and delivering them to the rebellion so that they can, blow up the Death Star and defeat the Empire, as we see in Episode 4, A New Hope. The rebels are led by Cassian Andor, who is a rebel spy, and also Jyn Erso here on the front here. And Jyn has a bit of a history with the Empire because her father actually built the Death Star. Basically, at the start of the film, we see her dad is taken by the Empire, who also kill her mum, and he is basically forced to design and sort of head up the building of the Death Star. We then see he sends a message to his old mate, Saw, which is then seen by Jyn, which reveals that there's a weakness he's built into the Death Star. So from then on, it becomes a thing of, quick, we have to steal the plans to the Death Star and, and basically stop the Empire from using what is effectively the Star Wars version of a nuke. So there's a lot of stuff I really, really like about Rogue One. First of all, this is what I kind of wanted Star Wars under Disney to be. Like, less about the Skywalker saga and all that stuff. I really wanted to get more films like this from Disney, like films where it's kind of these smaller missions, these smaller stories with these other groups of people that are sort of connected to the main narrative of Star Wars and the main world of Star Wars, but are also kind of their own thing. And I love that we get that here. This is a smaller scale story. It's a smaller scale mission. And that's really interesting. And I like, Star Wars Disney have kind of done that a little bit more with some of the TV shows for Disney Plus, but I think it really kind of started here in Rogue One, and I actually don't think it's been done better than it is in Rogue One. I love how, this is like I said, this is a much sort of smaller mission, and it's a smaller part of something bigger, but it feels big. It still has that epic feel that Star Wars should have. I love that. It also feels, and this is going to sound weird because it still has like the Force and stormtroopers and aliens and all that stuff, but it feels oddly more grounded than the rest of the Star Wars franchise, and I think that's because it's a bit of a darker story. It's presented a little bit more gritty, stuff like that. There's more kind of espionage and stuff like that with Cassian. There's more kind of underground political stuff with the rebels. And yeah, like, it just feels like a darker and grittier story, to the point where at some points it even feels kind of dystopian in a way, particularly in that kind of first act. And I really like that. I like the kind of the darker feel and the darker tone of this. It really kind of it shows the kind of the war in Star Wars. It shows how devastating and how war can like affect just whole towns and affect everyone. It's a really interesting, much smaller scale story, and it makes all the characters feel like underdogs. I like that Jyn isn't like a chosen one thing. That was kind of one of the things I didn't like about the sequels, is we kind of, with Rey, we kind of go back to almost like a "you are the chosen one" type thing, which Star Wars has done that enough. You don't really need to do that again. So while Jyn is kind of related to Galen, and that kind of gives Galen Erso, and that gives her, that's why the rebels kind of need her, because of that connection. She never comes across as feeling like a chosen one. She is someone who just, she's, a fugitive. She's a rebel. She's just an ordinary person. She doesn't like the Empire. She wants to, and then she finds out about this mission and her father's, trap that he laid in the Death Star, and she's like, we need to do this. We need to figure this out. She kind of finds common ground with the rebels, because initially she's kind of reluctant to help them. They kind of effectively capture her and drag her along on their mission. And yeah, she even says at one point, look, that my job was to get them in. They're in. I'm done now. And it's only later, after she sees this hologram message from her dad talking about, leaving a weakness in the Death Star, that she kind of really goes, okay, no, this is my destiny. This is a mission. This is what I need to do. Um, Really awesome. She's a really compelling protagonist. I really like Jyn Erso, both in how she's written and how she's played by Felicity Jones, who is just fantastic in this. Um, she, of course, is the co-lead along with Diego Luna as Cassian Andor, who is a fantastic character. Again, I really, really like him. You see his kind of struggles as well, and his kind of, his relationship with the rebellion, and how it changes, how he does things for the good of the rebellion, but sometimes he questions them, and he's presented as a very kind of flawed and interesting character. We don't get too much of his backstory in this, but it makes him all the more compelling. He's a really interesting character. You really feel for him. There's a moment where he and Jyn sort of argue, and her whole thing is, you lied to me and all this stuff. You can't talk your way out of this. And his whole thing is, look, you can't just be a part of the resistance and the rebellion when it suits you. Some of us don't get to pick that. And, the conversation between them is written and performed in such a way where you kind of don't take a side. It doesn't tell you to take a side. It shows you can sort of see both characters' points of view. And you can understand both characters' points of view. I really like movies like that, we have complex characters who have a complex relationship, and I really enjoy that. I think the characterization in this is one of the strongest elements. The character work, both in the writing and the acting. You've got Ben Mendelsohn as the villain, who is just fantastic. He's a really excellent villain in this. Of course, we do get a couple more villains. Tarkin shows up for a little bit, and we get a couple of awesome scenes with Darth Vader. This movie uses Darth Vader perfectly. But yeah, Ben Mendelsohn is the kind of the main antagonist. He's really good. He's a really interesting character as well. I like how they kind of establish that while he's the antagonist of this movie, he's kind of, they still kind of establish the hierarchy of the Empire, and where he kind of falls. Tarkin is above him, Vader is above him, and Palpatine is above him. I kind of like that. That's really interesting, and it gives another kind of layer and another dimension to his character. He could have been a very one-dimensional, scenery-chewing villain, but I think they do give him, they give him enough interesting stuff to do where he never feels like that. Even the characters who are just in this for like a couple of scenes. Forrest Whitaker's in this for a couple of scenes. Mads Mikkelsen plays Galen, Jyn's father. Those two, they're not in this film very much, but the filmmakers absolutely make the most of them. They are wonderful in this movie, both of them. Absolutely fantastic. And you got Alan Tudyk as K2, who I think is the best droid. I love K2 in this. He is such a good character. He's, excellent comic relief, but also a really good supporting character as well. I really like K2. So yeah, the characters are great. The pacing of this movie is incredible as well. We spend those first, we have like the first act, getting Jyn to kind of, getting Jyn involved in the rebels. Then the second act is kind of, them discovering the stuff about the Death Star and the plans, and all the stuff with Galen. And then in the third act, we get them stealing the plans and getting them to the rebellion, and it's all paced so beautifully. We build up the characters over those first two acts, and then everything kind of pays off and comes to a head in the big action-packed final act, the last like 40 minutes or so, which is all just action scenes, but it's still got those emotional sequences. This movie really makes you care about its characters. I love how, because the film spends so much time building up the characters and the world and the different storylines and the struggle and everything like that in the first two acts. In the third act, everything feels earned. The Empire throw everything at them. The odds are stacked against them. It looks a few times like they're not going to make it. And that's the thing. This movie is set before A New Hope. And, the mission that they are involved in involves getting the Death Star plans to Princess Leia, which we know they do, because that's how Episode 4 happens. So you already know that they're going to succeed in the mission, but the film is so brilliantly done. It's so masterfully told. It shows you how how ruthless the Empire is, and how outnumbered and outmatched the rebels are, and how they have to overcome odd after odd after odd, every single thing, that you don't care, that you know that they're going to win, but you still feel compelled. You're still rooting for them. You're still on the edge of your seat, and that's what a great film like this can do. I love how they do that. And I think the thing that I love the most about the story is that it reminds me why I love Star Wars. It's got that hopefulness to it, despite being a much darker story and a more kind of gritty and bleak story. It has that kind of hope, that kind of hopefulness to it that I love in Star Wars. Like there's a line in this where Jin says, "Rebellions are built on hope." I love that line. That's such a good line. And there's another bit, that same scene, where another member of the rebellion says to her, "Look, if this is the power that the Empire has, then what chance do we have?" She says, "What chance? The question is, what choice?" I love that. I love this whole, there's that sliver of hope that keeps them going. And it's such a small sliver of hope, because even if they achieve their mission, there's still no guarantee that the rebellion are actually going to stop the Death Star. So there's the slightest bit of hope that the rebellion will stop the Empire if they get these plans to them, which is also this kind of tiny sliver of hope. It's the tiniest little bit of hope, but it's a hope that keeps all of the characters going, and it's a hope that makes you root for them. And it's just so beautifully done. I love it. It's such a great story. I love this. I like this film more and more each time I watch it, and I've always liked this film. Just the characters are all compelling. No one is miscast in this. No one is wasted in this. The characters are all so well done. The story's great. The story is fairly simple. There's no like real big twists or turns or anything like that. There's no like plot, not a lot of plot armor and stuff like that. It's just a really simple but really effective story told really, really well. And I haven't even got to the technical aspects of the movie, because this movie is gorgeous to look at. This is a beautiful film. The special effects are wonderful. The production design and cinematography makes this film utterly gorgeous. There are so many shots in this that are beautifully done. There's so many brilliant choices in the directing and the cinematography and the editing that just works so well. There's a scene right towards the end where we see Darth Vader. Darth Vader's perfectly used in this, by the way. They don't overuse him. He has one scene with a lot of dialogue and one where he takes out a bunch of rebels. Perfect use of Darth Vader. And it's that second scene where he takes out a bunch of rebels towards the end. It's so brilliantly set up, Vader's appearance. You see kind of the rebels all just pointing their guns towards nothing, towards just darkness, and there's just darkness and silence, and you hear Vader's breathing, that you hear the breathing come in, and then you see the whole screen just bathed in red light when Vader activates his lightsaber. It is a perfect shot. It is beautifully done. I love that shot so much. It is great. It is masterful storytelling, visual storytelling. I love that. And there's a lot of cool shots like that in the film. There's bits where you're sort of zooming out on the Death Star and you see just how big it is, or you see it like in the distance looming like some, impossible to destroy threat. It's so well done, and the pacing, the editing, it's all just great. The music as well. I'd be doing this film a disservice if I didn't mention its music. You do have some of John Williams's music in here. They use the Imperial March at one point for Vader. They play the main Star Wars theme at the end. But most of the music is done by Michael Giacchino. I don't know if I've pronounced that right, but Michael Giacchino. And it's excellent. The score for this is so good, because it sort of uses that kind of classic Star Wars John Williams style, but at the same time you wouldn't mistake it for a John Williams score. Giacchino puts enough of his own kind of style and his own flair in it, so that it feels like an homage to a John Williams score rather than a copy of a John Williams score. It is excellent. Everything in this film works for me. So yeah, Rogue One, I love this movie. It has, I think, become my favorite Star Wars movie. Like, I get that Empire and A New Hope are probably the best, and I get that those are deeply important films and fantastic movies, and their legacy is cemented. But I don't know, this for me, this is my go-to. If I want to watch some Star Wars, if I feel like watching a Star Wars movie, more often than not, this is the one I'm in the mood for. Rogue One. It is just a wonderfully told film. I love it so much. It's dark, but it's hopeful. It's gritty, but it's fantastic. But it's, fantastical. The characters are all compelling. They all work so well. The entire movie just works for me. It really, truly does. I love Rogue One. But what do you think about it? Let me know down in the comments, whatever your general thoughts are. Let's talk about it. Thanks so much for stopping by. I'll see you when I see you. Bye.